Hi, and welcome to the Research Room, a space to make research by the people, for the people.
Perfect synergy.
And today we are going to start a brand new topic. We're going to be talking about romantic relationships. And I wanted to do this especially in December because I feel like that's the time that a lot of people like look for relationships, right? Like they want to be able to, yeah, it's the most magical time of the year. And you want to be able to share that with somebody, or at least show your family that you're sharing it with somebody. What we're going to be doing today is talking about dating and like how that has changed pretty drastically, I would say, in the past 10 or so years. And so with that, like, I mean, what about that? Like, what do these changes matter? Like, does that like affect like how we're communicating with people, like, and the types of relationships we're getting into, and like things like that? So, I think it's important, right? Like, I mean, maybe some people don't like relationships, but I think a lot of people do, right? Like, there's a lot of benefits to them. They help your mental well-being. They help your physical well-being. Although I guess there's definitely some research that suggests that like it's really only about like men that get the benefits, and like women don't necessarily get benefits from romantic relationships. But then maybe that's a different topic. So I do think even regardless if there aren't those other benefits, like people still want relationships. So I think this is going to be an important thing, right? So who do I have here today? Who's been just waving along. We have Huda Hanbali. She
Hi.
yeah, she got her bachelor's at the University of California, Los Angeles. And we've known each other for a while. She was also studying psychology out there, and I just want to like see like what are her experiences in comparison to this research. Does this research hold up in like somebody else's like actual normal everyday life? The research that I'm going to be talking about today, it is called "From First Email to First Date: Strategies for Initiating Relationships in Online Dating," and this was an article done back in 2019, so I mean fairly recent still. And all they did was they looked at actual like messages between people on these dating apps. So this was on, well, I mean, primarily this is from Tinder. 50% of the messages came from Tinder, and then other ones were like Plenty of Fish or OkCupid. Although I don't know, like, do people even still use those? But maybe they do. Why they didn't use other apps, I'm not entirely sure, like Hinge or Bumble, but like whatever. Here we are. What they did, they have all these messages, and so they wanted to look at the different topics that came up. And there's plenty of different topics that you can imagine. So, like, how do you initiate conversation? What kind of pickup lines are people using? There's also stuff about like how do you actually like show who you are? How are you attracting your mate? What kinds of things do you bring up? What kinds of questions are you asking? What Also like the whole idea of like being on a dating app, like that's kind of weird, right? Like, is that something that you want to discuss with your partner? Do you just kind of ignore that it's happening? It seems like it's a no from Huda. And so yeah, that's it's a basic thing that's happening here. And they use these topics to also predict who is most likely to go on a second date from all of this, which is I'll definitely reveal any tips and tricks for any of you that are out there in the dating scene right now. So Huda,
Yep.
what do you think of dating apps? I mean, what's been like your experience on them?
Um, Mostly just people just wanting to hook up. It's kind of sad. Um, but I mean, you do meet people, which is kind of the point. But that's pretty much it. You talk to someone and then you never meet them, and you're like, okay, that was weird, and you just move on.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds all too true, unfortunately.
Ghosting. Don't even
Oh,
get started
yes.
on ghosting.
So that's like a thing that didn't even like come up here is ghosting, which like that's such a huge thing. Like so many, like probably everyone that has been on a dating app has also been ghosted or has also ghosted somebody. Like it is very
I've
prevalent.
ghosted people. I'm not gonna lie.
So I mean, maybe we can even talk about like why that happens. But yeah, for whatever reason, this article didn't touch on it, and maybe it's hard to do that based off these initial conversations. But that's fine. So you said that people like really want to hook up, which I think that is very true, right? There's no real established like guidelines on like, oh, like you can do this, you can't do this. Like it's a very free platform. Unlike anyone can say whatever they want. Um, so I guess in even just thinking about this first topic of hooking up, like is that how they're like starting conversations? Is that like their initial like, are they very blatant about those kinds of things?
Depends on the person, I think. Usually they don't just say it right away. That's more of like internet chat room kind of thing,
Mm,
that I've seen at least.
mhm,
But mostly they're like, hey, and then you go, hey, and then you just kind of start talking about whatever was on their profile picture on written that they wrote or something.
mhm,
So yeah, it's not like a chat room online where they're just like, oh yeah, yeah, let's hook up. You have this. Let's talk on there. I don't want to talk on here anymore.
mm.
You don't want to deal with that.
So people sometimes make the transition very quickly from like off the app. Um, Gross. Anyway, but I mean, the idea of like you people normally just kind of say hey or whatever, right? Like that is also that's what this research found. So that's cool. Like I'm glad that like that also happened. Most people tend to have like what they call an innocuous pickup line, which is like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like kind of thing. Which like I don't even know if I'd consider it a pickup line, but like that's what they call it, whatever, right? Um, Other things that come up, and I'm curious about your experience with this, is do people like do they use like the cheesy kind of pickup lines? Like, do people? I mean, in your experience, do people do that?
Very rarely.
Mm,
Those are the funny ones, well, that
mm,
use the cheesy ones. They're either the funny ones actually or the really creepy ones.
mm.
And you gotta talk to them more to figure it out which one they are. Yeah, I mean, I've had really funny ones where I was like, oh my God, they read my profile and they made a joke about it. Like, that's
Mm,
cool. And there's one that's like, ooh, okay. Are you just being stupid and funny at the same
mm.
time? Like,
Interesting. Okay, so these they this research and mentions both of what you brought up. This idea of like direct pickup lines. So they actually like read something from your profile. Although this is the most rare. I think it was like 5% of people like did this. So I mean, maybe you're lucky in
sad.
that. Yeah, lucky in some
Because I
regards.
put so much effort into my profile and like making sure like the pictures I post are the right ones, Like,
Mm.
hate those people.
Maybe you did it right, and that's why
I
they
did it
felt.
exactly right.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say like you should see some of these guys. Like they don't even write anything in their profiles. There's just one word. It's like I don't want to take my time with you if you're not gonna put time into this.
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
sorry, I'm just that person.
No,
Maybe some
good.
girls like the fact that the guys don't like talking. I don't know.
Maybe, right. Yeah. And so like I am super curious about like how much do these topics even matter? Like, I think they're important, but like, I think there's also so many other things on these dating apps that like are probably more compelling on like what's going to give you like that first date or that second date, right? Like, I mean, how attractive is that profile picture? Like, you're probably more likely to give people that look more attractive to you subjectively. Like, you can give them more of a chance. And even if they say the wrong things, like, you're probably still going to be like, okay, like, I'll let that slide. And like, I'll try to keep talking to this person at least. Um, so yeah, and like none of that is accounted for here, so like these super important kinds of things. um okay, so cool. I mean, you've had like a fair amount of a range of experiences with those pickup lines. There's no actual like one that like works the best though. It seems like, at least based off of this, it doesn't matter if it's like this innocuous sort of thing. It doesn't matter if it's more the direct sort of thing. But I think there's plenty of room for this research to grow and like see, like I imagine it does matter.
Well, I prefer like they read my profile or like see pictures. like the person I'm with right now, they noticed that I went to this museum thing and there was like picture of Kermit there and like, oh, I love the Muppets, you know? And I was like, oh, okay. I'm not into them. I just took a picture there because it was cool, but I like Kermit, you know, but it shows that, you know, they actually scrolled to that picture, you know,
Hmm.
and thought like, hey, this person's kind of like me, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
So those are always nice. But if you just go hey or whatever at the same time, I mean, they put the effort in,
Hmm.
which is fine.
Hmm.
I mean, I'll piggyback on that. That's cool. You don't always want to be the first one, I guess.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. Like, who actually like initiates that, right? Because maybe you don't
yeah,
want to seem like you're like stalking them, like, oh, like I've memorized all your pictures and like I know every single detail about you. Um, so yeah, there's a little bit of wiggle room there. In the research, that only about like 20% of the people actually reference something from the profile. It's like, oh, like that's also sad. Okay, so
it
then
makes
other,
me sad.
yeah, other things that I'm curious about your opinion on. So one thing that like really kind of struck me is like, oh, like I wouldn't have imagined people would do this, but like also about 20% of people like will do this kind of thing, which is bring up relationship alternatives. And so what that means is they will talk about people that they've also dated from the same app. Um, and their experiences with them. And I mean, I think there's like probably tasteful ways to do this, but I also imagine like I mean, I don't think people are being that tasteful with it. And they're probably saying like, oh, like, oh, I really like this guy, and like, oh, he stopped talking to me. And it's like it seems like you really just want to date that person. Like, why are you still talking to me? Like, why? So, yeah, what is like your opinion on this? Like, have you ever done something like that? Like, have people done that to you?
I think the closest I've really come to it is like I guess I've done Bumble and Coffee Meets Bagel like the majority of the time. And like on Bumble, they're there for mostly like hookups, and
Mm,
then because they're always like, "What you doing tonight?" You know, or like, "I'm in a hotel right now. What are you doing?" You know, and then on Coffee Meets Bagel, it's a little bit more serious. Um, and they're more open about like what they want. Like you know, some people like just want open relationships, and other people want like convenient relationships or I don't know. So, you know, it's like it depends on the preference and I really appreciate it when people like say what they want. So I'm like, okay, I'm not wasting my time with this person, you know, because I
mhm,
don't want that or I do want that and let me try it, you know.
hmm,
So that's kind of the closest I've come to that kind of
hmm,
a thing.
mhm. So I mean, I think like the thinking behind it of like why you would ever bring up these other people is just that like you want to show that like other people have liked you in the past, like oh like I'm someone that is sought after or whatever. But I don't necessarily like it. Although I will say in like psychology, like that is kind of an important thing to some degree that like so there's this thing called CL alt, which stands for the comparison level of the alternatives. And so this just this idea that like people are like comparing people to others, right? Like if you think that like this is a good match, like it doesn't matter, like you will still like you'll keep swiping, like you'll keep seeing that there are other people, like things like that, right? And so you see like oh like okay, I matched with this person, but like I see that there's other person here. Like, oh, like what qualities do I actually like about this person? Like versus this person, like who's actually better? Um, so like that kind of thing happens, and I think it's a super prevalent thing, like and much more in your face now. Like not to say that it hasn't happened before, of course, before dating apps that's still happening, but like it's just so much easier, I think, to like see like oh there's 100 other like people out there that I could be like potentially dating. Um,
True.
so yeah,
There's a lot of plenty of fish in the sea.
yeah,
So
right.
that's why they call it plenty of fish. So I get it.
um, so, okay, so then other things that came up here. What do you think is like the better move? Do you think that people should be talking about the similarities that they have with others or the dissimilarities, the things that like maybe even make you unique?
Mm, definitely like they try to like get with you like with the similarities of what
Mm,
they see, and like, oh yeah, like, you know, I've been there before, or oh, I would like to go there, you know, like usually travel is like a thing on there. And
mm,
you know, it's like, oh, I play that game, or oh, I work out too, or something, you know, they
mm,
just want that connection. But I don't know. I mean, I guess there are some people, like if they see something on your profile they don't like, they'll say something about it.
mm,
They'll be all like, "Yeah, I'm not into that.
mhm, mhm,
How much do you play, or how much do you go to this thing, or do you listen to that music all the time?"
mhm,
Like, there, you can definitely tell like it's a deal breaker for them, and it's like you don't waste their time with them because obviously that would be a terrible relationship.
mhm.
But but I think that's pretty much about it.
Hmm. Okay, so with the people that are talking about these similarities, do you find them to be like authentic, or do you think that they're like sort of just saying it to like to win you over?
Mm, That's such a gray area because
Mm,
there's always people that want to win you over, you know, if they really like want to be with you, you know,
mhm,
either the good way or the bad way. Or I shouldn't say bad way, I should just
mhm,
say horny way. I don't know. But I mean, with all the similarities, it's really nice to know that they have that same thing with you and
mhm,
there's a connection already, and it's like,
mhm,
oh, okay, I have something to talk about with this person, versus like, oh, this person already hates this about me. That's it's kind of a bummer. I guess I should find out some other similarity, if any. But then there's always like people that do fake it. It's like, oh, I want to be with this person because they have muscles, or you know, oh, look at that guy. He has some nice eyeballs. We can make some nice children with his eyeballs. You
mhm,
know, like I don't know. So I mean, I get it. There's probably something there, but I always try to poke them further.
mhm,
Like, hey, what's this? Do you want kids? Do you want a family? Do you want just a cat and that's it? Like, you know, it's like you have to go to the big things kind of early on
mm,
in my book.
hmm,
Because I'm not really looking for hookups. Because
mhm,
if
mhm,
you're looking for a hookup, I don't think you would go there.
hmm,
You'd be like, oh yeah, you know, I have that same thing at home. Let's go to each other's house and, you know, see if we can match them up. I don't know. I don't even
mhm.
know what I'm saying at this point, but
No, I know what you're
hopefully you
saying.
understand. Oh, okay, that's good. That's good. At least
You
one of us.
you
All
brought up
right.
so many good points. Like there's so many different layers there that like I don't think I'll be able to talk about each of those layers. But maybe I'll say that like with these similarities, like yes, people like should be going for the similarities rather than differences. Like that's a pretty like established like thing in psychology as well, that like you get along better with people that have similarities, right? Like especially for
Yeah.
like romantic relationships, like you have to spend so much time with this person, like those differences will definitely like keep hitting you in the face. um some differences are okay, like you can resolve things, you can like compromise and like things like that, of course, but like we want more similarities than not. um and that's the whole idea of like homophily, and if you ever come across that word, that's what that's trying to say. I hope you never come across that word, like no one should ever use it. um but
That'd be a cool
let's
band name, honestly. Muffly.
right. So then the idea of authenticity, that also came up in the research of like how do you know that someone's being authentic, and how do you also portray yourself as being authentic, right? Like of course it's like good to like interview the other person in some kind of ways and like make sure that they're being like real. So like you can ask like other like outside things that like maybe aren't on the profile, and like see how the story matches, and like see like, oh, like you actually like understand like all these things, and like yeah. um and then how do other people like also bring about like their own authenticity? It seems like the most common way, at least from this research, is that people are self-deprecating and they want to do that because they don't want to come across as like gloating or like anything, right? Like they're not this egotistical person. Which I mean, there's a line there that is like, yes, you should be a confident person, but like you shouldn't always just be like hitting yourself. But I mean, yeah, that's what most people gravitate toward. Like, did you also find that that's happening when you were on?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm.
When you were mentioning that, I just thought of like one of the worst online dating things that
Oh.
I had to deal with, and it was just some guy. We had like a cool connection. He's just asking things about me, and I'm like texting him all, times of the day. And then like I remember when I was at work, he goes, "Hey, I have a request," and I was like, "What?" Okay, that's a little weird. And he goes, um, I need like $50 for this game, can you give me some money? And I was like, oh my God, I've been talking to a scammer this entire time. And that's probably not his picture. Like, why would he need like $50? It looks like he has a good job.
Mm.
Like, this is stupid. And I reported him like in the
Mm.
app because I was so offended.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess people like want to be their authentic selves, but then it like you gotta also be vigilant. It's like,
Mm.
oh, these are scammers.
Right, right.
They're just gonna pop up everywhere. But
Mm.
at the same time, you have to know like what they want. Like,
Mhm.
I've also been on dates where it just seems like I definitely was like looking for a relationship and they weren't, for
Mm.
example, but they said they were,
Mhm.
so, and it was just clearly that they weren't, and it was just like, oh, okay, well, bye.
Yeah.
I don't want to see you. I got other plans,
Mhm.
or ghost them because you
Mhm.
don't want to actually be brave enough to tell them whatever it is. So that's pretty much it.
Mm.
That's my experience
Mhm.
with it.
Yeah, yeah. So I imagine there's also like there's a gendered component there of like women have to deal with it a little bit more. Although I mean,
Yeah.
scams definitely happen across the board. Like I'm not gonna say right, but when it comes to like safety, like I think there's that like gendered thing that comes up, and women of course like need to be a little bit more vigilant because of these kinds of things that like I mean a man might be portraying themselves as authentic and then you meet them in person and it's a completely different story. You get out of that situation. Yeah, so I'm glad that like you didn't even say something like, "Oh, it was nice to meet you. I'm gonna go now." Like I was just like literally like, "Okay, I think our time's up." Like, bye.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and so I'm also the idea of like ghosting. I think also like creeps in there of like, I mean, again for like safety reasons, like women say no often, right? And men still pursue. Like, so, what do? You just have to ignore them, and maybe report if that's like a necessary thing. So, that would be a whole other podcast episode, though. Like the amount of stuff
Yeah.
we cover with harassment on these dating apps, it's too much. Um, is there anything else you want to say on that before I?
I definitely have been pursued hard once, and it wasn't fun because we
Mm,
were not a match for each other.
mm,
But I think it blinded him. And then, like, after saying no so many times, he finally, like, woke up.
mm,
It's like, oh, okay. I don't know. But, anyways, let's move on.
hmm.
It was an interesting thing. But he's a nice person. So
Okay, I mean, it's good that
it's
he's a nice
just
person.
he's a nice person, but he definitely went a little too extreme in the beginning. So I
Mhm.
don't know. When you're thinking about if you just met someone and you send them like really nice things to their office and you're like, what the hell is this?
Mm,
You should just run just a little
mhm.
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The idea of like you do nice things so that it'll be reciprocated and like reciprocated in ways that you do not want to reciprocate. That happens often.
Yeah. And like someone's like, spending like a bunch of money sending you flowers, right? And you're like, oh shoot, what? Like I don't know this person. I didn't think about this person the past few days. Like, why are they
Mm,
thinking about me? And it's like, like it feels like, you know, you feel really, really flattered in one
mhm,
hand. It's like,
mhm.
oh yeah, I'm hot enough for this guy to buy me really expensive things. And the other hand, you're like, oh wait, this is creepy.
Yeah.
So, because you wouldn't do that to someone.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, no, and hopefully that the signal that that is creepy that overrides anything else.
Sometimes people go through it and sometimes they don't. And by people I mean me, but it's a different show, right? So
Maybe you should start your own podcast and talk about these stories.
no, I probably get arrested for whatever I say. Who knows?
All right, so I'll I'll try not to press you too much on that so that you don't get arrested and I also don't get arrested by being an accomplice here
It's
somehow.
not illegal. Come on.
um Okay, so one thing that like for sure, like seems to be not a good thing on these apps based off the research. I mean, we already kind of talked about other things that like this research does not mention, which like again, like we need more research on this before we can make like actual conclusions. But some things to be on the lookout for is this idea of so the relationship alternatives. Like that is definitely something that like probably don't do that. Like that is it's not helpful. So if there's like let's say a 60% chance of going on a second date with somebody, that gets reduced to 30% if you are someone who's bringing up these relationship alternatives. And again, there are probably ways that like it could be helpful or like good that like you're disclosing something about yourself that like, oh, maybe I learned from this experience or something like that. Like all of that would be great. But I'm sure there's plenty of wrong ways to do it as well, right? So um, uh, the other thing that goes on with that is this research found that women tend to do that more often, which, I mean, I don't know. Do you have any ideas on like why?
Mm, why exactly they're doing what?
Why they're
What do you mean?
bringing up other people that they dated more often than men?
Mm, I mean, I guess it's a story thing. Like that's the only thing I can think of right now. Like I wouldn't want to bring up someone, especially like on the first date, you don't
Mm,
want to be bringing up exes and stuff because
mm,
that's just setting yourself up for being a depressing person,
mm,
or like, if they see how you handled it and they didn't like it, it's like, oh, is she gonna treat me that way? Or
mm,
um, I don't know. I don't bring up exes until like I really know the person. It's like, hey,
mm,
this is part of my past, and I
mm,
kind of want you to know about it. But I don't know. I guess maybe the snobbier girls, like, oh my god, I like totally went on a date, and this guy like bought me, appetizers and dessert
mm,
too, and you just buy me the meal. What is this? Like, I don't know these people because I'm not a mean person or a person who expects more from a guy on a first date,
mm,
but I mean, some girls are. A lot
mm,
of them, a lot of guys I've been with, they're like, "Oh my God, girls are always late. It's so refreshing to like meet someone always on time." And if you know me, I'm always on time with everything, or if
mhm,
not, I'm early. But they're always like complaining about how girls are late on the first date, and I'm just like, okay, like I don't know these people because I just know me.
mhm,
But okay. I mean,
mm.
I guess I kind of shine there. But if you're bringing up like bad things that happen to you on first dates, I think it's funny. But I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know. It could be also someone testing the other person, like how
Mm,
they would be treated.
mm. Interesting. Yeah, yeah. No, I do like that
Yeah.
approach. Maybe there's like other direct ways that like maybe are more palatable, but like if it is used like for that reasoning, like I can understand it at least for like why people do it. Cool. Interesting. So okay, this is one thing that doesn't work. What do you think is one thing that like does work? What would potentially give you like that second date opportunity?
Oh, that's a loaded question. He's nice. I don't know. And if he was like, willing to pay
Mm,
for the meal instead of just expecting you to pay,
mhm,
that's nice.
mm,
Like I always refuse the first time, and
hmm,
then the second time, like, um, it's like, oh, I'll pay half, and the guy goes, oh, really? Okay, and then I'm like, I don't like you anymore. Um, sometimes I feel that way, but most of the time I think it's right to pay half, especially on the first date. Um, but but at the same time, if you're, an administrative assistant and he's a lawyer, come on, like, come on,
Mm-hmm.
like pay for the first date. Like, I'll fight it in the beginning, but then if you insist, I'll back down. I promise. But I mean, for that, to get that second date, I don't know, he just has to be really honest and about what he wants. One of my first dates was only 15 minutes.
Mm.
We met up at a coffee shop, and we sat there talking, and I was all like, "Oh, look at that old guy, he looks very cute or something." And then he goes, "Oh, I know this guy. He's always here." And I was like, "Oh, damn. I just really screwed myself there. I look like a bitch now." Like, I just thought this old man was cute. And I don't know. I prodded him to talk about family, and I think that irritated him because, first of all, if I'm talking about family on a first date, that's like the lowest like thing you can talk about. It's really basic. But I mean, I wasn't prodding to where like, do your parents like hurt you or something? Like, I was just saying, how many do you have? How many siblings? And I think once he finished his hot chocolate, he was all like, "Well, it was nice to meet you. I gotta go. Bye." And I remember going home being really upset. Being like, did I just screw up that date? Ugh. Yeah, and it wasn't like he looked the same in his profile picture. Like, he was definitely balding a lot more in person.
Right.
But sometimes people don't like to. So it really depends on people clicking, on having something to talk about, where both parties are okay with it. I don't know. There also has to be an attraction. If there's no attraction, but you're willing to have a second date, then that's one thing. But if you're not, that's another thing. So it's like, oh, I'll give him another chance, or no, don't want that. So.
Okay.
What about you?
With me?
You? Yeah. I'm just talking about me over here. What qualifies you to get a second date?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I don't know the last time I had a first or a second date. It's been a while, so I haven't put much thought into it. But I will say, based off of research, what has worked on these dating apps, at least. So the only thing that like predicted if people are more likely to have a second date, which I think is also insane. Like, we need to have better information on this. But like the one thing that worked here was that people that talk about their preferences in the relationship. So like, what kind of partner are you actually looking for, and like being open and like communicative about like that kind of thing, which I think is like, that's pretty good. Again, like if you went from like a 60% chance of that second date, then you jump up to an 80% chance if you're talking about those preferences, which is like, yeah, I mean, you're almost at 100%. Like, you should be doing that. So yeah, I mean, I like that though, that like it's being honest and like authentic about like what you're looking for. It's like, what are your goals here? Like, I actually like put thought into like this. I'm not just like blindly looking. Like, you've actually like done something enough in your life to like be able to like reflect and like think like, oh, this is someone that I want. Which again also shows that like maybe you're more likely to be committed and like invested and like things like that. So all good things in a relationship. Go ahead.
No, true.
Oh.
Like, I agree with that too. It's like, if I'm really like connecting with a certain person, like, oh yeah, I want that, and I want that, like, that sounds like a good relationship to me. Like, and then each other more. So yeah, because if that person just doesn't want anything you don't want, so it's not gonna be pretty. That's all.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's kind of what happened with this hot chocolate guy date. Like, maybe it wasn't open enough about what was happening. And maybe that should be like happening on the app before meeting them. But like, I don't know, sometimes you don't want to just like live your whole life on an app. You just want to like talk to somebody. So
Yeah.
I mean, no judgment either way. As long as you eventually get there.
Yeah. Trophy guy.
Well, I think, I mean, we could definitely keep talking. I have a lot of other topics on this, but we we should maybe stop this for today. I think that there's a lot of
Aw.
good information out there, but you are always welcome back to talk about relationships. There's going to be a lot of other topics that we're going to be doing this month. So we're talking about conflicts in relationships. We're talking about support and how do you support a partner in a relationship. We're also talking about like just other positive things, like what is making relationships work these days. So tune in for those kinds of things later this month. And I mean, if you want more information on this dating kind of thing, I'm going to still be making other content on this. So check out all the other content that is on our website, which is roomforresearch.com, as well as on social media, which is at Room for Research. And until next time, thank you for coming on, Huda, and being very open and honest about your experiences. And yeah, please come back sometime. Until
Thank
then,
you. I probably will.
yeah,
You can count
cool.
on me.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Bye for now.
All right. Bye. Bye, everyone. Hope you learned something or didn't. I don't know.
With the sun